The 2023 epic historical drama film Napoleon is based upon the story of Napoleon Bonaparte, primarily depicting the French leader's rise to power, as well as his relationship with his wife Joséphine. But as entertaining as this movie is, how true to history is it? The movie opens in 1793 amid the French Revolution, when the young army officer Napoleon Bonaparte watches Marie Antoinette beheaded by the guillotine. Later that year, revolutionary leader Paul Barras has Napoleon manage the siege of Toulon. He successfully storms the city and repels the British ships with artillery. This is incorrect, as Napoleon did not attend the execution of Marie Antoinette, as he was commanding the forces at Toulon at the time. Time then moves on, and the movie correctly portrays the end of the Reign of Terror and Napoleon's suppression of the royalist insurrection of 13 Vendémiaire in 1795. Napoleon, using his sudden fame, woos aristocratic widow Joséphine de Beauharnais, and the two eventually marry. Despite their vigorous sex life, they bear no children. This relationship is a major plot within the movie, and is the point of a handful of historical inaccuracies. Oxford historian Michael Broas, who worked on the movie, noted several inaccuracies in Napoleon and Josephine's relationship, including the timing of their divorce, which was 1809 and not 1807. Nor did Napoleon slap Joséphine during their divorce. The movie portrays Joséphine as encouraging the divorce, whereas in reality she was fearful of it. The historical Joséphine also died the day before Napoleon's exile to Elba, not a year later during the 100 Days, and thus was not a factor in Napoleon's return. The film then jumps to Napoleon's Egyptian campaign, where in the Battle of the Pyramids his artillery fires upon the pyramids of Giza. This has caused a good deal of controversy, as it never happened. Historians know that Napoleon held the Sphinx and the pyramids in high esteem, and used them as a motivation for his troops. Also, the movie shows the battle as happening right before the pyramids, whereas in reality, it took place a few miles away. In the movie, Napoleon rushes home when he hears Joséphine has an almost 10-year younger lover. The directory criticises him for abandoning his troops, but he condemns them for their poor leadership of France, and, alongside several collaborators, overthrows them in a coup and becomes first consul. This is partially true, though the movie omits the military situation surrounding his flight from Egypt. The movie then jumps to 1804, when Napoleon is crowned Emperor of the French by the Pope, during which he audaciously puts the crown on his own head, much to the shock of those present. Historians dispute this, as Napoleon had planned to crown himself, and therefore it would not have come as a surprise. A year later, Napoleon outmanoeuvres and defeats the Austrians and Russians at the Battle of Austerlitz, forcing them to retreat over frozen lakes before bombarding the ice and drowning them. The battle is shown as being fought during a snowstorm, though the real battle was fought on a cold but bright day with a dense fog hanging over the battlefield. Furthermore, the battle was shown on a much smaller scale than it really was. In reality, Austerlitz was a wide-spanning battlefield, stretching over a number of towns and hills. Napoleon's artillery did fire into the frozen lake, but only around 200 were killed as a result of this, and it was later propaganda that said there were thousands killed. The movie then jumps to 1807 and the Treaty of Tilsit, and completely dismisses the War of the Fourth Coalition, of which the treaty was part of, as well as some of Napoleon's greatest victories. There is also no mention of Napoleon's invasion of Spain and Portugal, or of the Peninsular War. In 1812, Napoleon invades Russia after Alexander defaults on a peace treaty with France. He prevails, despite bloody guerrilla resistance by Cossack forces, at the Battle of Borodino, but finds Moscow empty and later set aflame. Napoleon retreats during the winter to France, having lost 500,000 men. The movie's depiction of the Battle of Borodino is highly dramatised, with Napoleon himself leading a cavalry charge. In reality, Napoleon, an artillery officer by training, never personally led a cavalry charge, and the battle was mostly fought over entrenched Russian positions. Historians have stated the movie's battles as a Hollywood mishmash of medieval melees, meaningless cannonades, and World War I style infantry advances. Napoleon then enters Moscow to find that it had been abandoned and later burned. This the movie portrays correctly, as it does the French retreat from Moscow. The movie then skips to 1814, when the coalition force Napoleon's abdication and exile him to Elba. But this skip in the timeline totally misses out some key events, such as the Battle of Leipzig in 1813 and Napoleon's defence of northern France in the winter of 1813 to 1814. In 1815, upon hearing that Joséphine is unwell, Napoleon escapes the island and returns to power in France. Joséphine, having been forced into reclusion, dies before he arrives. But as stated before, Joséphine died the day before Napoleon's exile to Elba, and was not a factor in Napoleon's return. Like shown in the movie, troops were sent to intercept Napoleon, but ended up joining him and restoring him back to power. It then shows the Congress of Vienna, where the Duke of Wellington addresses the gathered leaders of the alliance. Though, if you are unfamiliar with history, you may well be puzzled as to who Wellington is, as the movie doesn't make that clear. The movie then shows Napoleon counting the number of troops gathered against him, and that it was he that chose to fight at Waterloo. This is untrue, as it was the Duke of Wellington who retreated to Waterloo, as he had seen the battlefield a year earlier and knew he could make a defence there. The film's depiction of the Battle of Waterloo is probably the worst you'll see in terms of historical accuracy. It completely omits the roles of the Dutch and German troops in Wellington's army, and the crucial farmhouses of Hougoumont, La Haye-Saint and Papelotte. Other pivotal context omitted is the 30,000 troop detachment under Marshal Grouchy, who had been tasked with chasing down the Prussians after the Battle of Ligny. The movie also shows the British position as being entrenched, but this was not true, as Wellington strictly ordered that no entrenchments were to be dug. Marshal Ney then launches his infamous cavalry charge against Wellington's line, who correctly form square. The difference from history is that Wellington's men were kept behind a ridge, a reverse slope to protect them from artillery fire, and no cavalry broke through any of the squares. The movie makes no sense in moving infantry out from entrenched positions with stakes to defend against cavalry. In short, Wellington's use of topography is all wrong in the movie. The movie then shows Napoleon himself leading a charge in a desperate attempt to win the battle, and the battlefield is turned into a chaotic brawl. In truth, Napoleon remained behind his lines, and the advance of the Old Guard was halted by British musketry before finally retreating. And contrary to the movie showing the Prussian army linking up with Wellington, the Prussians advanced towards the battle through the village of Plancenoit on Napoleon's right flank. Also, Napoleon never saluted Wellington at the end of the battle, like seen in the movie. The movie then depicts a defeated Napoleon meeting Wellington, where in actuality the two never met. Napoleon once again is exiled, this time to the island of St. Helena in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and is seen bantering with children, writing his memoirs and presenting to listeners a version of history where he is always right. Napoleon dies in 1821, hearing Joséphine beckon him to meet her again. Napoleon is and should be treated as historical fiction. It totally ignores important historical facts for entertainment purposes, like Napoleon's field marshals, who played a key role in his campaigns, are almost absent from the movie. Historians have openly criticised the many inaccuracies with producer Ridley Scott, who heatedly defending his choices by saying, "Excuse me, mate, were you there? No. Well, shut the up then." Scott also declared, responding to French critics, that the French don't even like themselves. In short, the 2003 movie Napoleon is not a documentary, but a movie to entertain people, and shouldn't be seen as anything more.